All right, let's get ready to rumble, right? Today's deep dive, we're tackling the one and only George Foreman.
The grill guy.
Yeah, the girl guy. But I'm telling you, there is so much more to this guy. We've got his Wikipedia page up, and wow, what a story.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating story. I mean, you've got this incredible mix of like grit, resilience, business savvy.
Not your average story.
Not every day you see a heavyweight champ turn into, a successful entrepreneur, let alone one known for kitchen appliances.
Right. I mean, I knew he had a tough start, but I had no idea he was a high school dropout, like got caught up in street life and everything.
Yeah, it's really a classic kind of underdog story when you think about it.
Total underdog story.
And that's what makes that whole Job Corps chapter so compelling,
Yeah.
right? Because it gave him that structure, that purpose,
Right.
and ultimately led him to boxing.
Which, I always picture those movie montages when I hear about the Job Corps, and then he finds
Yeah.
boxing, then da-da-da-da. And here's the thing that blows my mind. 2 world heavyweight titles. But his proudest moment, winning Olympic gold in '68.
That's incredible.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Above the titles, above everything.
It really says a lot about him and his values, right?
Mhm.
I mean, and especially when you consider he wasn't like this undefeated prodigy going into those games. His amateur record, I was looking at it earlier, 4 losses before he even stepped onto that world stage.
Wow.
So that gold medal, that wasn't just a victory. That was a testament, to his perseverance.
Yeah. I always thought about those early years as just like raw power, just knocking everyone out.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong. He was a force of nature back then.
Mm.
But even in those early fights, there were these glimpses of like calculated aggression.
Oh, interesting.
Like take the Joe Frazier fight, for instance. Everyone remembers the down goes Frazier.
Of course, yeah.
Right. But what often gets overlooked is how Foreman used like strategic positioning, timing to line up that knockout punch.
I never thought about that.
It was there.
So he was already thinking a few steps ahead,
Absolutely.
even when he's known for just brute force.
Exactly. And that kind of leads us to the Rumble in the Jungle, right?
Yeah.
Against Ali. Talk about a clash of styles.
What a fight, I mean.
You've got Foreman, the heavy hitter, going up against Ali, the master of the rope-a-dope.
The rope-a-dope, which is so interesting.
Essentially, let your opponent tire themselves out.
Just absorbing all those punches.
And tire himself out, he did. I mean, Ali basically turned that fight into a mental game, which Foreman at that point in his career wasn't necessarily prepared for.
Oh.
Yeah. It really exposed that vulnerability in his fighting style at the time, which was stamina.
Stamina. Because he was used to ending fights quickly.
Exactly. So going the distance with Ali, who was known for his agility, his endurance,
Oh, yeah.
completely changed the game. And that first knockdown, the one that Foreman suffered in the 8th round, that was a turning point, physically and mentally.
Huge turning point.
Yeah.
And then after this devastating loss, maybe one of the most famous losses in boxing history,
Definitely up there.
he takes a 10-year hiatus and devotes himself to ministry. Talk about a turn of events.
Who would have guessed that, right?
That's a whole other deep dive right there.
Seriously. From the knockout king to a man of God. That's not a transition you see every day. It really makes you wonder, what else don't we know about this guy?
Right, like makes his comeback at 38 even more unbelievable.
Yeah.
Did anyone think he could actually reclaim the heavyweight title after all that time and the way he did it?
I mean, there were a lot of doubters out there. But Foreman, he kind of used that to his advantage. Like, think about those grill commercials, right?
Oh, yeah.
They weren't just about selling grills.
It was a genius marketing.
Brilliant strategy. It made him relatable, even funny. And it helped fund his youth center.
Which was a huge part of his life.
Absolutely. So he's turning skepticism into a branding opportunity.
So smart.
Right. But then you can't forget what happens in 94. 45 years old. Knocks out Michael Moore.
Michael Moore.
Becomes the oldest heavyweight champ in history.
It's insane.
The ultimate comeback story.
Unbelievable.
And it proved he wasn't just reliving past glory. He was rewriting the rules.
A totally different fighter that second time around, too.
Oh, yeah.
Not the same powerhouse from the 70s.
It's like Foreman versus Father time became this whole other fight.
Right.
That he was determined to win, but he had to do it on his own terms now, right?
Right.
Couldn't rely on youthful energy anymore, so he adapted. Became a master of pacing himself, conserving energy, picking his shots.
Interesting. So different.
He even started utilizing his jab more, which, if you think back to his early style, not a big part of it.
Huh. So he was like I always say, instead of a hurricane, he was like a python, just slowly squeezing,
That's a great analogy.
just wearing them down.
Strategic, patient, always in control. That Moore fight's a perfect example. Moore was younger, faster, but Foreman just outmaneuvered him. Used his experience, ring generalship, just wore him down. That final knockout punch.
Sure.
Just the exclamation point on a master class of strategic boxing.
See, that's the thing I think people miss if they only know the younger Foreman.
Right.
But let's shift gears for a second, because we got to talk about his life outside the ring.
Oh, absolutely.
Because honestly, just as fascinating.
It's like he lived multiple lives in one. We touched on his faith journey, but I think it's worth going a little deeper there.
Yeah.
You know, that near-death experience after the Jimmy Young fight, that wasn't just a physical turning point. It was a spiritual awakening.
Yeah. Because he even says in the Wikipedia entry, like, he felt this sense of peace during that experience, which is wild considering, I mean...
Right. You're that close to death.
That close to death.
And that's what led him to Christianity. And it wasn't some publicity stunt.
Right.
This was a profound shift in his entire worldview. Became an ordained minister, dedicated his life to his church, poured his heart and soul into that youth center we talked about. This is George Foreman, putting his money where his mouth is, using his platform to really make a difference in these young people's lives.
And then there's the whole George Foreman grill phenomenon.
You can't make this stuff up.
Who could have predicted that?
It's almost comical when you think about it. This intimidating boxer, known for his knockout power, is selling us unhealthy grilling.
It's amazing.
But the impressive part is, he didn't just slap his name on the product. He was deeply involved in its development, the marketing, everything.
Oh, he knew what he was doing. It said on his Wikipedia page he made over $200 million from that grill.
That's incredible.
$200 million.
It's a testament to his business acumen, though. He understood his brand. He knew how to connect with a wider audience. And he wasn't afraid to, to poke fun at his own image a little bit. Embrace the irony of it all.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring. He never let himself be put in a box. Boxer, minister, entrepreneur, family man.
The whole package.
He did it all. And speaking of family man, can we talk about the fact that he has 12 kids?
12 kids.
12 kids. And that he named 5 of his sons George.
You've got to admire the commitment to the name.
I know. I mean, but on a serious note, that says something too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Family's clearly incredibly important to him.
Yeah. And it's a side of him you don't always hear about, but it just adds another layer to this already. Just incredibly complex and compelling figure.
It really does.
It's amazing. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Like 38, most boxers are thinking about hanging up the gloves.
Yeah.
He's just getting started on his second act,
It really makes you think differently about age.
Right.
What's possible? I mean, he could have just walked off into the sunset after that first championship run.
Totally.
But nope. He chose to reinvent himself. Inside the ring and out.
Completely. So if we were going to say, like, what are the big takeaways from Foreman's story? What do you think is, like, the main thing?
For me, it's got to be, like, embracing change. Never underestimate resilience. He had setbacks, made mistakes.
Yeah.
But he never let those things define him.
Never.
Learned from his experiences, adapted, and ultimately came out stronger, more successful than ever.
100%. I mean, he could have stayed down after that Ali fight, but he got back up. And not just in boxing, ministry, business, fatherhood, like this capacity for reinvention is
incredible.
Right.
Amazing.
And he did it all with this authenticity that you can't fake that. He was who he was, preaching from the pulpit, selling grills on TV, or battling it out in the ring.
Always George Foreman.
Always George Foreman. Makes you wonder, what don't we know about him? Because this Wikipedia entry is just scratching the surface.
Right. It really makes you think about, like, the man behind the persona.
Yes. That's the beauty of a deep dive like this, right? We uncover these fascinating little things, challenge our assumptions, and leave us wanting more.
Totally. It reminds you that even the most well-known figures have hidden depths, untold stories.
Well said. Well said. George Foreman, the boxer, the minister, the entrepreneur, the family man. What a story.
The original.
The original. Thanks for joining us on this knockout deep dive. We hope you've learned a little something new about the man behind the grill and the gloves.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
And for you, listening, if George Foreman can reinvent himself at 38, what's stopping you from chasing that dream? Something new, something you never expected. Keep that in mind as you go through your week. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.